Welcome to the AEC Groundbreaking Growth podcast.
Hosted by Stambon S. Welcome back to Groundbreaking Growth, where we dive into stories, trends, and strategies of next generation leaders in the AEC industry. I'm your host, Emily, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Jen.
Yes, and today we're joined by a very special guest, Adrienne Tuck, who is the Director of Strategic Development at Owens-Ames-Kimball. Adrienne is a trailblazer and is going to continue some of the themes that we talked about last episode with Rachel around self-awareness and creating your vision for yourself. So welcome, Adrienne.
Great. Thanks. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so I have had the privilege of working closely with Adrienne over the years. We first met on the Southern Colorado Committee for SMPS years ago, and since then she's been a really influential mentor for me in the AEC industry. I knew nothing when I came in, and she has mentored me with everything from negotiating pay, business development, marketing best practices, to personal development. So thank you, Adrienne, for being here to share your story. I'm super excited about this. Just to kick us off, can you share a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. And thanks for the kind words. I feel like when we met ages ago, that was a long time ago. Time has really just clipped on by. So yeah, how have I gotten to this point? It's been a really interesting ride. So I have storytelling in my DNA, and I was raised by a father who was in commercial real estate. So very familiar growing up with the boom and busts of commercial real estate. And I grew up in Dallas, Texas. And in high school, I worked on the political campaign to have the American Airlines Center funded by taxpayer funds to be built in downtown Dallas for the Stars and the Mavericks. And even as a high school student, I understood and really believed that placemaking could really transform and revitalize a city. And so sure enough, the initiative passed, the American Airlines Center was built, and it was the anchor project to redevelop downtown Dallas back in the mid-90s. And so that kind of set me on my path, unbeknownst to me. So I went to college and double majored in journalism and political science, and graduated from college. Didn't exactly know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I thought I wanted to go to law school. So I ended up moving to Denver from College Station, Texas, for a boy who ended up being my husband. So it worked out, but my parents were slightly horrified by this prospect. And he went to law school. He's a Colorado native. He went to law school at DU. And so I moved to Denver for basically a non-paid internship. So I used my alumni network to get a non-paid internship in the Colorado Governor's Press Office, which sounds fantastic, but it was definitely non-paid, definitely had to wear a suit to work every day. I could not afford a suit to wear to work every day to my non-paid internship. So I worked two other jobs at the same time. So I was a nanny nights and weekends, taking care of kids. And then I also worked at J. Crew. At the time I worked at J. Crew, they had a program where new employees got a new outfit. So you could choose a free outfit that they would give you. And so I walked into J. Crew and I said, I'll have the suit. And that was the suit I wore to my non-paid internship every day. So from there, I think I applied to, this is not an exaggeration, it had to have been like 200 jobs. And nobody wanted to hire me. They were like, who is this girl and what does she even want to be with these two liberal arts degrees? Mm-hmm. So through a family friend, I basically got a job as a paralegal assistant working at a law firm, and did a really good job and was able to move into their marketing department. So their managing partner was like, he's like, I don't think you want to go to law school. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, I don't know, but you have a marketing department and I know how to use InDesign from my journalism background. And I think that I could be a real asset in that department. And so they just made it happen. So that kind of put me in at least a place to start building the career that I have now, even though I was working side hustles to, make ends meet and pay rent and things like that. So yeah, it was a really interesting start, but the only job that I applied for that I didn't have a connection for was my first job in the AEC industry. And that was working for what is now a global architecture firm. They were just a national architecture firm when I worked for them. And someone just took a chance on me. They were like, you know how to use InDesign, you can write, like, we think you could be, a marketer for us. And I didn't know what an SOQ was or an RFP. And I remember sitting down with my boss, I was like, I just need an hour to suck all of this information out of you so that I know what I'm doing here. So yeah, headed off down that path and then ended up from there using my network to get other jobs. So I really only applied for one job in my whole career, and I've just gotten other jobs by using my network or someone saying, hey, you'd be a great fit for this, or we know someone who's looking over here, and just using those connections to get, down the path of my career.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And it seems like, first of all, I love this story of how, you just had this motivation, you had this grit to just make whatever you were doing work. You saw the vision. You worked in the press office, you needed a suit. You got a job at J. Crew to get a suit. Like, you had this vision for yourself throughout your career. And it seems like you've always really been able to tap into that motivation and the vision for yourself throughout. So what motivated you to take the initiative and essentially create your own roles in the career?
Yeah, so I mean, I'd love to say that I had this. I mean, I guess I did have a vision, but I didn't. If you asked me what was the vision, I'd be like, I don't know. I just knew that I was meant to do something more than wherever I was at whatever stage I was at. And not in like a career climbing type of way, in just I'm trying to tap into a life's purpose kind of way. And then I grew up playing competitive sports, and so I think I have this athlete drive, to be prepared, to do the next right thing, to figure out what didn't work and turn the dial to make it a little bit better. And so I think that motivation comes from being an athlete, and just being able to just do the next right thing, even if I could never see the whole staircase of this vision. I still can't see it. I still feel like I am searching for my ultimate life's purpose, and I think I'm getting closer and closer, and I just keep doing the next right thing, and the next thing is revealed, and somebody comes along my path that I'm supposed to connect with. And so I think it's just having tremendous courage to just do the next right thing, even when you don't exactly know where you're going. And I feel like that's being in the flow of life, that when you're in the flow of life and you're open, the doors will open that need to open, the doors will close that need to close. You'll have an inner knowing of, I should do this, or I need to move away from this. And I think just having the courage to trust that and keep going. So I think hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I was going to say that courage, I think, oftentimes needs to be paired with some great self-awareness, right? If you don't know yourself and you don't know your own strengths and maybe the areas where you need team members to step in and support you, it can be hard to be courageous in moments, and especially in your career, right? When you're looking to make a move or thinking about what that vision is. What kind of explain that journey for yourself. How did you get to understand yourself better? And maybe what's some advice you would give emerging leaders, young leaders in AEC to get to know themselves better and understand their strengths?
Yeah, and I think, I think my default is to fall into an intellectual trap. Like, I just know that these things need to be done, or I studied this, or I asked these people these questions, and I know this is the path. And I can be hard charging and too logical oriented. And when you're trying to advocate for change in an organization, or you have a gift of seeing what being an issue spotter, I suppose is how I'd phrase it. It's really about how do you know that this is the right problem to solve. So it's asking questions, it's interviewing people, understanding, like, do you see this? What does this look like for you? And tweaking what the thing is that needs to be done. And then being able to pair that with helping people through like psychological change. You can't just know the steps that need to be done and like run 1,000 miles direct in one direction. Like, you have to help understand, where are people in this process? What do they think and feel about it? How do I bring them along? What do I think and feel about it? How do I bring myself along for this change? And I think the way I have gotten that self-awareness is through, going to a therapist, dealing with childhood stuff that comes up, because so many times what we're dealing with in the workplace isn't really about this problem that's right in front of us. It's, something is striking a chord that resonates deep in the past of somebody, and they're offline, or they are, having a reaction to something that isn't even about what we're working on at the present moment. And so understanding that about myself, and being like, oh, if this is happening inside me, it's probably happening inside other people. So how can I recognize it in myself? And so some of the things I do are really tapping into, what am I feeling and what do I need? And I try to do that every time I wash my hands. I've tried to like Pavlovian, like tie that in.
Conditioning, yes.
Yeah. And so then I'm checking in with myself many times throughout the day so that I can show up in a good way and know deeply what's going on. So I'm not just on autopilot going through the tasks,
Yeah,
Right.
and I think
mean, sometimes I even like, someone will ask me how I'm doing like midday or later on in the day, and I'm like, I have no idea. I've just been doing the stuff. So I have to think about it for a minute and think about how I'm actually, like, how am I really doing? And sometimes you just answer surface, right? Because it's like, I'm doing great, thanks. How are you? But to really check in with yourself like that, I think is so powerful.
Yeah, that reflection, to your point, Adrienne, isn't something we do enough in the day. And it can make a big deal if you catch yourself in oh, I'm ruminating in my mind, or, oh, I'm, doing XYZ, or some, string has been pulled from, past experiences. When you do that self-reflection, you can catch yourself, and you can kind of change your emotions to some extent, change your thought patterns, and get to a better state to hopefully change the rest of your day, your week, how you're interacting with your team, etc. So I love the washing the hands. That's a great way to do it.
And sometimes I feel like you just need to acknowledge, like, oh yeah, I am feeling frustrated about this thing that went really poorly. And then since you acknowledged it, you can let it go. And it's not just like spinning under the surface where you don't even realize that you're like unhappy about that thing. So yeah, those are just tools that I use. And I even use a feeling wheel to actually identify what is it? And sometimes I'll stick that on the wall in the bathroom. So when I'm washing my hands, I can say, oh, I'm feeling, joyful today about blah. And,
Yeah. That's one thing, like, we often talk about internally on our team, is just developing emotional intelligence, especially in our industry, right? That tends to be much more technical, very design, construction oriented. But we know that all of these projects get done through people, right? Relationship based kind of project management. And language has a big part of how we interact with one another. And so many times we have like, right, 4 or 5 emotion words that we can think of, right? Angry, sad, happy,
Mhm.
etc. But I love the kind of emotion wheel because there's so much nuance to emotions. And it's part of building that emotional intelligence and seeing that in other people and yourself. So love that.
Absolutely. It still doesn't come natural to me, but I
Yeah.
have tools and tricks to help me like figure it out quickly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And as you become a leader, that is so, so much more important, right? As you're managing teams, have you found it beneficial, um, as you're looking at your own team to be able to, potentially spot emotions in them and yourself and whatnot?
yes, and I can see when people are going offline, like I call it going offline, when they're,
Yeah.
thinking in that more reptilian brain where it's just a reaction. And I'm like, okay, this person, their ability to be rational is not present in this
Hmm.
conversation. And so I'm going to let them vent, and then I'm going to come back and talk about this later when they can access the other parts of their brain. And so I think it's been really helpful in just allowing people to be who they are and deal with what they're dealing with, but still kind of work around everything and get everything done that needs to get done and get everyone rowing in the same direction. Just understanding what's happening in the moment with people.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, right, that checking in that, okay, I am feeling frustrated and just acknowledging it, right? Like even acknowledging it in someone else, they might not be in a place. They look frustrated, they're it's kind of that extra step in self-awareness, or like that prompting of self-awareness, to not only be like, I am frustrated, but why am I frustrated? Or
Hmm.
maybe I can reach some kind of understanding on this human behavior or what's motivating me. And I wonder, within your journey and within now even moving into a lot of leadership, and you've been a mentor, how has your understanding of human behavior and motivation changed over time?
I mean, like I said before, I think, I was just focused on like process and the logical steps to take. And now I'm trying to focus on like the holistic human experience and how do we integrate that with getting all the tasks done. And so I think that as leaders, our um, emotions can be contagious in the workplace. And so I don't think the answer is, oh, well, I have to be this like fake happy nice person all the time so that everyone else is fake happy and nice. Like we also, have to have the courage to deal with reality and be on the same page about what is going on. But how can I maybe take 5 minutes between meetings so I'm not just rushing from meeting to meeting to be like, all right, I'm gonna process through this and set it aside so that I can go into the next meeting without the residue of this meeting,
Hmm.
or when I am really frustrated, just letting somebody know, hey, I'm really frustrated about something over here. It has nothing to do with this. So they just at least can give me some grace that I'm coming in hot,
Yeah.
from something else. And so I think it's about being authentic and being aware, and knowing that people in the workplace, it's like a hive and people feed off of that emotional energy. And so how can you process stuff in the moment so that you can be at your best self when you're going on to deal with the next thing? And I don't think I do it perfectly by any stretch. I feel like this is something that's evolving over time and I have to catch myself. Um, but yeah, I think understanding human behavior and motivation, can help you understand the people that work on your team and what is really important to them. And if you can tap into the motivation, then their motivation, then it's organic and you're not just trying to get someone to do something. You're tapping into maybe what their strengths are. So one of the tools I really like is the Working Genius framework. Patrick Lencioni developed it, and it is a really quick assessment. It's $25. It basically shows you that if you're working in your area of working genius, you could work all day, every day. It doesn't even feel like work. You're just jazzed to do it. If you drop down into the next tier of your, what do they call that? Working competency, you can do a lot of work there. Eventually, though, it will feel like work and lead to burnout. And then the bottom one is your working frustration. And you want to spend as little time there as possible because that's where people feel burnt out. And so knowing where people are in that curve, you can help, create spaces so that people are mostly operating in their area of working competency or working genius. So I think things like that can help eliminate burnout, put people in their best position to get stuff done. We all have to do things that are in our working frustration, but how can we not live there, and just get those things done and come back up to something we like doing?
Yeah. And to kind of tie this back a little bit to our first topic of how you've kind of created these roles for yourself, did you leverage something like that? Like knowing what your working competency is and then what your working genius is to create a role that allows you to be in that more?
Yes and no. I mean, yes. So I think I try to, when I create these roles at these companies, so I
And maybe
will,
you could give an example of like a role you've created
yeah.
for yourself. Yeah.
So when I was working for an architecture firm, I met some engineers and they were like, "Oh, we're looking to hire a marketing person slash admin person." And I'm like, marketing slash admin is not a thing. Two very different skill sets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in interviewing them and figuring out what they needed they were a brand new branch office in Colorado. And so in really asking a lot of questions and understanding where they were at in space, I was able to clearly see, like, I think you need someone who can do marketing and business development. And so here's what that would look like. So I gave them some, proposal examples. I gave them some business development process examples. And I put together what a 30, 60, 90-day plan could look like. And I sold them that this is what they needed. And it wasn't like, oh, I want to do this role, so I'm going to sell it to them.
Yeah.
It was genuine alignment of this is what they need. They might not know that they need it yet.
Yeah.
And this is where I can plug into those. And so I think when you can make things mutually beneficial, then it's not just an employee taking from a company or a company taking from an employee. Like we have to be, aligned on what does the company need and where can I help with that? And so, yeah, if it's not coming from some selfish place and you're plugging into something a little bit higher level, I feel like it works out.
Yeah, that like symbiotic relationship where you both pour into each other and get fulfillment and growth and whatnot. So that's a great example.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I wonder, what is a piece of advice? So kind of tying in everything you've learned, tying in where you started, where you're at now, what you've learned through therapy, through, work experiences, leadership. What is one piece of advice that you would give to the next generation of leaders in the AEC industry?
I mean, I would honestly say that the only person you can change is yourself. And so if you can focus your inner work on improving yourself and understanding what your motivations are, what some of your behaviors are, and maybe what those are tied to. And I did that by seeking outside perspectives. So through therapy, through a mentor, I always am interested in having somebody else's, some trusted person's perspective on how I'm seeing things, because I only see things as I see them. I don't necessarily see them as they are. And so I think having diverse perspectives of trusted people that can hold up mirrors for me or say, well, I'm seeing this, or I think people are experiencing you this way, has been really helpful, because I can have a good heart and good motivations, but if my impact is not in alignment with my intent, then it's a disconnect with people. And so and especially in what I do with business development, I want to be genuinely connecting with people. And so yeah, I think just really getting to know yourself and having those diverse outside perspectives that you trust, which can be scary to ask somebody to do that. And so some of the ways I have found those people are through referrals, or going to things like SMPS and noticing like, okay, this person maybe won an award and I heard them speak and they seemed like they had some values that aligned with mine. And those type of relationships, I think, have put me on a completely different course than if I was just trucking along trying to do this by myself.
I love that, because I feel like networking has this really scary sort of stigma around it. And one of the things that I've learned with one of my previous bosses, and then with you, Adrienne, of these really well networked, but also really well liked and well respected in the industry. Like, I think that it's this really genuine approach. Like, I genuinely am wanting to connect with people, and I'm wanting to connect with people that align with my values, that not really like, what can I get out of this relationship, but like, is this a relationship that I can grow and learn more about this person? And I'm genuinely taking an interest in this person and want to know more about them. And I think that's a really, really, that's one of the things that stuck out to me a lot in my career journey, watching you. I mean, Adrienne has literally won awards for how well connected she is in the industry. So
they were mostly second place awards.
Well, you have kind of an amazing story, and I think journey and perspective, just from kind of everything you've experienced in your early career, that passion for journalism and kind of a different perspective. And it's amazing to see that come to light then in AECs, because it is such an amazing industry. And it's great to have diverse teammates and diverse perspectives. So definitely appreciate everything you shared today.
Great. Well, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, and it's right. It's a small industry.
Yes.
It's connected somehow, it feels like. Yeah, Adrienne, thank you so much for joining us today, sharing your journey of self-awareness and action. And to our listeners, we hope you found this conversation inspiring like we did. Be sure to tune in next time for more insights on Groundbreaking Growth.
Thanks.